Have you ever wondered why? Just when things in your life seem to be getting better, a stable job, a healthy relationship, an exciting opportunity, you end up being the one to ruin it? You procrastinate, you pull back, you tell yourself, I'm not ready yet, and then you watch the opportunity slip away. Have you ever felt that way? I've worked with hundreds of adults over the past 15 years. And you know what? This is a story I've heard over and over again. One of my patients once told me, "Doctor, I don't understand why, when I meet someone who's genuinely good to me, I find a way to walk away. When my company is about to promote me, I suddenly quit. It feels like there's a part of me that just won't allow me to be happy." And here's the truth, it's not laziness. It's not a lack of discipline. And it's not that there's something wrong with you. Psychology has a name for it, self-sabotage. Imagine being handed a map that leads directly to freedom, a clear path toward the life you've always wanted. But instead of following it, you crumple it up, turn around, and convince yourself, maybe the destination wasn't worth it anyway. Sound familiar? Self-sabotage is like a silent battle we wage against our own potential. It's not loud or dramatic like in the movies. Instead, it wears subtle masks: procrastination, perfectionism, rationalizing. You tell yourself, it's not the right time, or I'm not good enough, or what if I fail? But underneath all those excuses is one single truth: you're afraid. Afraid of success, afraid of change, afraid of being seen. I want you to pause for a second and really look at yourself. Can you remember a time in your life when everything was finally moving in the right direction? And suddenly you found a reason to pull yourself back? Maybe you dropped a project, not because you weren't capable, but because of a vague uneasiness in your chest. Maybe you left a relationship with someone who truly loved you, simply because it felt too good to be true. That's the heartbreaking paradox of self-sabotage. On one hand, you long for success, love, peace. On the other, there's a part of you fiercely determined to block it. When we were children, many of us learned that safety meant staying small. If you grew up in a home where achievement was mocked, or where love only came when you were quiet, obedient, invisible, then your brain learned an early lesson: success is dangerous. Standing out means getting hurt. And so you shrank. As adults, that same mechanism still runs in the background. You sabotage yourself, not because you hate yourself, but because your brain believes it's protecting you. The brain doesn't prioritize happiness, it prioritizes familiarity. If sadness and failure were familiar to you as a child, then as an adult, suffering can start to feel like home. Another patient once told me something I'll never forget: I know pain, loneliness, and failure are terrible, but at least I know how to survive them. Happiness? I've never known it, and that terrifies me. You see, sometimes we choose the prison we know over the freedom we don't, because freedom feels too unfamiliar. In psychology, this is called cognitive dissonance, the clash between your inner beliefs, I don't deserve this, and the outer reality, people praise you. Opportunities come your way. When those don't match, the brain does something strange. It sabotages success just to make reality align with the old belief. Do you see it? Self-sabotage isn't failure. It's your unconscious mind trying to keep the inside and the outside consistent. And here's what I want you to understand: you are not broken. Self-sabotage is simply a wounded protector inside of you, a part that once helped you survive, but is now outdated. And that's the good news, because if it was learned, it can also be unlearned. The next time you feel yourself about to sabotage an opportunity, like quitting when things are finally going well, I want you to stop and ask, what am I really afraid of here? Am I afraid of failing, or am I afraid of succeeding? And I'll be honest with you, in most therapy sessions, when a patient finally answers that question honestly, something shifts in their eyes. They realize their biggest fear isn't failure, it's allowing themselves to shine. I know, it's easier said than done. Overcoming self-sabotage doesn't happen overnight. It takes awareness, self-compassion, and small, deliberate steps to rewrite the old story. But the most important thing I want you to remember, right now as you listen to me, is this: you are not alone. And self-sabotage isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you are standing right at the edge of transformation. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. How many times have you walked away from an opportunity? From love, from your own dreams, just because a part of you believed you didn't deserve it? And if right now, you're beginning to see that pattern, that loop, maybe, just maybe, you've already taken the first step out of it. Have you ever noticed something interesting? Self-sabotage rarely shows up when we're at rock bottom. When you're exhausted, stuck, or completely burned out, sabotage isn't usually what rises to the surface. But when you start moving up, when your work begins to flourish, when love starts to bloom, when someone praises the painting you made, that's when a little voice whispers in your head, "Careful. Don't get too confident. They'll find out you're a fraud." That's the moment self-sabotage is strongest. It's like a gatekeeper, standing right at the doorway of your success, saying, "No, you're not allowed to pass." One of my patients once told me, "Every time I'm about to be recognized, I find a way to ruin it." I remember when my company was about to promote me to team leader, just a few weeks away. But suddenly, I quit. I told everyone it was because I needed rest. But the truth was, I was terrified. I was afraid that if I actually became a leader, they'd discover I wasn't good enough. You see, self-sabotage doesn't crash down like a storm. It drizzles, quietly, like a constant light rain. It shows up in today's procrastination, in the email you didn't send, in the phone call you didn't return, in the confession of love you buried deep inside. Research in psychology shows us this. The human brain is wired to prioritize safety over happiness. And for many people, familiar pain, failure, loneliness, even rejection, feels safe. Because it's predictable. Happiness, success, intimacy, those are new, unpredictable, and therefore, terrifying. I want you to imagine this. You've been living in a dark room for years. It's cramped, damp, uncomfortable, but you know every corner by heart. One day, someone opens the door and says, "Come outside, there's sunlight, fresh air, a bigger world waiting." At first, you're excited, but then the fear hits. If I go out there, will I be left behind? Will the light hurt my eyes? What if I get lost? And in the end, you close the door again, staying in the only place that feels familiar. That's self-sabotage. There's one form of sabotage I see often in young people, perfectionism. They say, "I'll start when everything is perfect." But that day never comes. I once had a patient who was an artist. She had dozens of beautiful paintings, but she never dared to exhibit them. She told me, "I'll hold a show when I have one perfect piece." But you know what? Perfect was just an excuse, a mirror that kept her stuck. And while she waited for perfection, her passion slowly withered away. Perfectionism is a clever trap. It convinces you that you're just holding high standards. But in truth, it's a mask for fear. The fear of being judged, of being seen in all your imperfection. And if you keep waiting, you'll never start. Another common form is procrastination. I'll do it tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. Procrastination isn't laziness, it's fear. Fear of failure. Fear of not being good enough. Fear that the outcome won't match your expectations. And the easiest way to avoid that fear is to do nothing. And then there's another form of sabotage. Perhaps the most painful. Choosing the wrong people to love. I once worked with a woman in her 30s. She was smart, kind, beautiful, but she always chose men who wouldn't commit, or who treated her badly. When I asked her why, she stayed silent for a long time, then began to cry. She finally said, "Because I don't believe I deserve real love. At least with these men, I know what it's like to be abandoned. But if I love someone good, I'm terrified I'll lose it all." This is the brutal truth about self-sabotage. It convinces you that familiar suffering is safer than unfamiliar joy. But here's the saddest part. While you think you're protecting yourself from pain, you're actually creating the very pain you fear most. You avoid love to avoid abandonment. And in the end, you abandon yourself. You postpone your dreams out of fear of failure. And in the end, you guarantee failure, because you never begin. Self-sabotage is a closed loop. The more you avoid, the more you reinforce the old belief. See? I really don't deserve it. I really am not good enough. And so you stay stuck inside that circle. Like a hamster running on a wheel, endlessly moving, but going nowhere. I want you to pause and ask yourself, how many times have I ruined my own opportunities, not because I lacked the ability, but simply because I didn't believe I deserved them? What I've learned from years of experience is this: self-sabotage never screams. It whispers. It whispers. Don't send that email. It's not the right time. It whispers, don't love this person. They'll leave anyway. It whispers, sleep a little longer. You can start tomorrow. And those tiny whispers, added up, can become an entire lifetime of holding back. And I know what you're probably thinking. So what do I do? Do I fight against it? This is where I want you to understand something crucial. You can't overcome self-sabotage by waging war against it. Because it's not your enemy. It's a part of you, a part that once learned how to protect you. Even if it did so in the wrong way. If you see it as the enemy, you'll only deepen the gap within yourself. So the real question is this: instead of fighting it, can we learn to listen, to understand, and slowly begin to rewrite the story we tell ourselves? You know, there's an important truth that many people overlook. You can't heal something if you keep hating it. And this is especially true with self-sabotage. Imagine this. Deep inside you, there's a child. This child was once hurt, abandoned, told things like, you'll never make it, you're not good enough, don't dream too big. And to survive, that child learned to hold back. It whispers, don't step out. It's dangerous. Don't love too much. They'll leave you. Don't try. You'll fail. That child is your self-sabotage. And the question is, what will you do with it? Will you punish it, scold it, or will you sit down and say, I get it. You're just trying to protect me. In therapy, we call this practicing self-compassion. When you begin treating yourself with kindness, you realize that every self-destructive mechanism has one root: fear. And fear doesn't need to be silenced. It needs to be heard. One of my patients, let's call him Michael, struggled with constantly abandoning projects halfway through. He told me, I hate myself for never finishing anything. I feel so weak. But when we dug deeper, he broke down crying. The truth is, I'm scared. If I finish, people will criticize me. But if I quit, at least I have an excuse. I didn't give it my all. Do you see? Quitting wasn't laziness. It was a shield protecting his vulnerable heart. And when he learned to tell himself, I know you're scared, but we can take just one small step forward, the cycle began to loosen. I'd like you to try a little exercise right now. Close your eyes, unless you're driving or doing something unsafe. Picture a younger version of yourself, maybe 6 or 7 years old, curled up in the corner. That child is your self-sabotage. Now imagine walking over, kneeling down, and saying, I see you. I know you're just trying to protect me. Thank you. But now, I'm grown. I can take care of myself. You don't have to carry it all anymore. Just this simple act of dialogue can bring a subtle shift inside. As if, for the first time, that child can breathe, and so can you. Research in acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, shows us this. Instead of fighting negative thoughts, recognizing and accepting them as part of the human experience actually gives us more strength to live by our values. Simply put, you don't need to erase the whispers of self-sabotage. You just need to notice them. Oh, I hear you. And then gently return to what you really want to do. I often tell my patients, self-sabotage is like a passenger in your car. It can shout, criticize, doubt, but the key is, you don't hand over the wheel. So let me ask you, how many times have you let that passenger drive? How many times were you about to say something loving, but stayed silent because that inner voice stopped you? How many times did you want to start a dream project, but held back because fear whispered, don't be foolish. You'll fail anyway. A first step to rewriting belief is learning to question self-sabotage. When that voice shows up, instead of instantly believing it, try asking, is this really true? What evidence proves I'll definitely fail? If my best friend were in this situation, what would I tell them? Most of the time, you'll discover that self-sabotage isn't truth. It's just a story, repeated so many times that you came to believe it. I remember another patient, let's call her Sarah, who always believed she was unworthy of love. When I asked, where did this belief begin? She suddenly recalled a childhood memory. Her parents once snapped at her, saying, you're always a burden. Nobody wants to be around you. Just one passing remark, but she carried it for decades. From then on, she entered every relationship with the belief, they'll leave me. And as a result, she acted like someone who was always waiting to be abandoned. And eventually, her fear became reality. Relationships fell apart. The breakthrough came when she asked, is it really true that I'm unworthy of love? Or was that just something said to me as a child? That single shift cracked open her old belief. And when the belief began to change, her behavior changed. And when her behavior changed, so did her results. You see, self-sabotage is not the enemy. It's part of an old story. And if you dare to look at it, you can begin to rewrite that story. So ask yourself right now, what belief in me is causing me to hold back? Where did that belief begin? And is it still true for who I am today? You may be surprised to realize, most of what's holding you back isn't the present, it's old wounds. Old memories from the past. And I promise you this, the moment you choose to face it, to question it, to embrace that inner child, you've already taken the first step out of the loop of self-sabotage. In the next part, I'll share with you some practical, concrete steps, ways you can gradually shift your behavior, build habits, and create a life where self-sabotage no longer holds the steering wheel. I believe by now you're starting to see that self-sabotage isn't some giant monster lurking in the shadows. It's more like a small whisper in your mind. But I also know this. Understanding it is one thing. Stepping out of it is another. That's why now, I want to talk about some practical ways, tiny actions, that can actually change the entire trajectory of your life. First, let's talk about awareness. You see, so much of self-sabotage happens unconsciously. You procrastinate without even noticing. You pull away from love before you realize it. You choose the safe job without stopping to ask, is this really what I want? That's why the very first step is awareness. I often guide my patients to do something that sounds almost too simple, journaling. Not long, complicated journals. Just a few lines. How did I hold myself back today? What was I feeling in that moment? What voice did I hear in my head? Writing it down like this helps you start noticing the patterns. It's like looking in a mirror, but this time, it's a mirror for the mind. One patient of mine discovered something surprising. She always procrastinated on anything creative. But when it came to safe tasks, like paying bills or cleaning the house, she finished them immediately. Why? Because creativity made her visible, open to judgment. Ordinary tasks didn't. When she realized that, she laughed and said, "Turns out, I'm not lazy, I'm just afraid of being seen." From then on, she started gently encouraging herself whenever she approached creative work. Another tool I use often is breaking goals down into smaller steps. Have you noticed how we tend to sabotage ourselves when goals feel too big? I'll write a book. I'll start a business. I'll completely transform myself. Those goals are so overwhelming that the brain immediately triggers fear. Impossible. And so, you stop before you even begin. So try this instead. Don't write the whole book. Write one page. Don't change your whole life. Change one small habit. Don't launch a full business. Test out a mini project, like selling one handmade item. When you break it down, your brain no longer feels threatened. It relaxes, and you can take one small step forward. And those small steps? They're what create big change. One story I'll never forget is about a patient. Let's call him David. He always wanted to exercise but could never stick with it. When I asked why, he said, "Because I set the goal of working out for an hour every day. And if I missed just one day, I felt like a failure. So I quit altogether." We tried a small experiment. Instead of 1 hour, just 5 minutes. Sounds ridiculous, right? But guess what happened? He actually started doing it consistently. And after a few weeks, 5 minutes naturally grew into 15, 20, then 30. Not because he forced himself, but because he finally broke through the psychological barrier of starting. Here's another thing I want you to remember. Action first. Motivation second. A lot of people wait for motivation to strike before they start. But the truth is motivation often comes after you begin. It's like cleaning your house. You don't feel like it at first. But once you pick up the broom and start sweeping, it gets easier and even satisfying. Human psychology works the same way. Another powerful tool is finding allies. Self-sabotage thrives in silence. But when you bring it into the light, its power is cut in half. You can share with a trusted friend, a support group, or a therapist. Sometimes all it takes is someone saying, "Hey, I see you're holding yourself back again," and suddenly, you wake up to it. I had a patient once who struggled with procrastination so badly she couldn't turn in assignments on time. We made a deal. Every time she finished just a small portion, she would text me, I did 15 minutes. That's it. And do you know what happened? For the first time in her life, she turned an assignment in on time. Just the simple presence of an ally, someone witnessing her effort, changed everything. But perhaps the most powerful tool of all is learning how to forgive yourself. Because here's the truth. You will stumble. You will sabotage. You'll procrastinate. You'll get scared. You'll retreat. But the difference now is this. Instead of beating yourself up with, "I'm useless," you'll say, I slipped. That's okay. I'll stand back up and try again." That kindness, that compassion, is what truly breaks the cycle. Research by Dr. Kristen Neff, one of the pioneers of self-compassion, shows that people who treat themselves kindly when they make mistakes actually have more motivation, more persistence, and are less likely to self-sabotage. Why? Because when you're not terrified of making mistakes, you're willing to try again. And persistence is what takes you far. So remember this. You don't have to go fast. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep going. One small step, consistently. And let me leave you with this question. If today you could change just one tiny habit, just one, which would it be? Maybe it's waking up 10 minutes earlier to write a few lines. Maybe it's finally sending that email you've been putting off. Maybe it's saying one kind thing to yourself instead of criticizing. However small it is, it still matters. I've seen so many of my patients transform their lives starting with steps just like these. And I believe you can too. In the next part, I'll share something even deeper. How to turn these small changes into a sustainable way of living, so that healing from self-sabotage isn't just a one-time breakthrough, but a lifelong journey. I want you to pause for a moment and take a deep breath. Because if you're still here, listening to these words, it means that a part of you truly wants to change. You might feel exhausted. You might feel torn inside. Maybe you even doubt yourself. But let me remind you of something. That resistance, that inner struggle you feel, is actually proof that you're standing right at the edge of growth. Self-sabotage is not a sign that you're weak. It's not proof that you're broken. It's simply an old defense mechanism, like a loyal soldier that once protected you when you were young, but who no longer fits the life you're trying to build today. Instead of treating it like an enemy, you can begin to see it with compassion. I understand why you're here. Thank you for keeping me safe. But now, I don't need this kind of protection anymore. You know, so many people who've sat across from me in my therapy room have cried when they finally realized this. They realized they weren't broken. They weren't failures. They had just been carrying around old armor for too long. And when they slowly took off each piece, something miraculous happened. They discovered that deep inside, they were never as fragile as they once believed. Inside of them lived a strength that had been waiting all along. I want you to imagine this. You're standing in front of a big door. Behind that door is the life you've always longed for: peace, success, love, creativity. But there's a small voice whispering, "Don't step through. It's too risky. Stay here, where it's safe and familiar." And for years, maybe you've listened to that voice. But today, you can place your hand on the doorknob. You can take a breath and turn it. Yes, on the other side of the door, there may be risks. You might fail. You might get hurt. But you might also find a kind of happiness you've never known. You might learn that failure doesn't destroy you. Rejection doesn't erase you. And being seen doesn't make you any less worthy. In fact, it's the very act of stepping out, of letting the world see you, that makes life truly alive. I remember a patient of mine who spent half her life avoiding her dream of writing. She once told me, "I'm terrified of writing, because what if my work is terrible? What if people laugh?" But when she finally started writing, awkward, shaky, imperfect, she realized something. No one laughed. In fact, some people were touched. And she learned the most important lesson. It was never about creating the perfect work. It was about allowing herself to show up. That's the message I want you to carry with you today. You're allowed to show up. Even if you're not perfect. You're allowed to love, to try, to fail, to live a life that matters. I know change doesn't happen overnight. But here's the truth. You don't need to defeat self-sabotage completely. All you need is to notice it, smile at it, and take one small step in the opposite direction. Every time you do that, you're retraining your mind, you're rewriting your story. And you don't have to do this alone. Find people to walk with you. Share your story. Let others remind you that you matter. even in the moments when you forget. If there's one thing I hope you take from this video, it's this: self-sabotage doesn't mean you're unworthy. It simply means you've been too used to living in fear. But you can choose differently. You can choose to walk in faith, to live with kindness toward yourself, and to open the door to a bigger, fuller life. I want you to try saying this out loud, right now. Wherever you are, even if it's just a whisper. I don't need to hide anymore. I am worthy. I am enough. And I am learning how to step out of fear. The voice inside you might still tremble, but let it speak, because that trembling voice, that's the sound of a new journey beginning. Your future is not carved in stone. It's ink that's still wet. And the pen is in your hand. You can rewrite, restart, stumble and correct, but you never have to return to the same old loop. Self-sabotage is not your destiny. It's simply a doorway, and you, with just one small step, can walk through it. And when you do, I promise you'll discover that you were never weak. You were simply becoming. And that journey of becoming, messy, slow, challenging as it may be, will always be worth it. So go ahead, take the step. If this message spoke to you, leave a comment and share what part of yourself you're most ready to change. I'll read them, and I'll be here walking with you. And if you know someone out there who needs these words, share this video. It might be the gift they've been waiting for. Don't forget to subscribe so we can continue this journey of healing and growth together. You are not alone, and I believe the stronger version of you is already on its way.